put that back up there. Well, let's not put that up for the moment. I want to catch the people that I didn't get before. So let's see, is Isel here? Cabanilla, Isel Cabanilla. Let's see, got Ehab. Giovanna's here. Edza Gomez. Hugo Herrera. Travis Humphrey.
I'm here, Professor.
Okay. And Hugo, you're here too, I see.
Yeah.
Vanessa Levis. Natalie Perez. And Pancho Ramirez.
Here, Professor.
Okay, good. And finally, Mario Ruiz.
Here.
Okay, good, Mario. And I think I've gotten everybody else. So, how'd you feel about the results from the first round of the game contest? Don't all speak at once, but
Yes, Professor. I feel that I don't know. We make the decision because it was a child decision. We make it like go hard or go home, kind of though. And I thought we were going to do better in the decision, but we did okay. I'm not complaining, but I thought we were going to do better.
Well, Pancho, I think one of the things that you want to do is make sure that you study the results. And if you keep a good record of what your thinking was when you made the decision, you can go back and just kind of test and say, okay, was that a good one or was that a bad one? And a lot of times when you've got a good decision, it still may not work out exactly as you expected because everybody else did exactly the same thing. So just bear that.
I have a question. So
Yeah.
is your goal to have the best credit rating, or is it just to meet the expectation that has it that's listed right there?
Well, the credit rating is a fallout. That's an end product. So I wouldn't work toward a credit rating. I would work toward getting the highest ROI, the highest stock price, things like that. But there's a lot of things that you'll do. For example, with credit rating, and I think I mentioned this before, when you start the game for real, you're going to end up looking at building a new factory to add to the capacity you've got. As soon as you do that, your credit rating goes down. I don't know whether you follow your FICO scores or not, but if you end up at Christmas time buying a lot of Christmas presents, all of a sudden you're moving up towards your credit limit and your FICO score goes down. As soon as you pay it off in January, back up it goes. Same thing with the game. That as you are making the prudent and correct decisions to expand your capacity so you'll be able to handle a larger volume, you're going to hurt your credit rating. By the time you get out to year 20 or the 10th decision, you'll be back in Fat City. Did you have any other besides mentioning the credit rating? Was there anything else that you were thinking?
No, that's about it. I was like a little confused about like the type of result because I see it was ranked between each team. So I wasn't sure exactly what it meant to be like ranked at a specific spot, like how you actually are ranked. So
Well,
you're ranked off of everything, right? Pretty much.
yeah, you can always look at that very first report. It's a footwear industry report. It's the first one that comes up. And it doesn't tell you a whole lot right now. And in fact, I don't think it's ever as insightful as the competitive efforts report. That one really is the one that tells you how you're doing relative to everyone else. Okay. Any other things to be said? If not, we now will go and take a look. I'm going to pick up right where I left off the last time. And this was, I believe, the last slide I showed. And that was, what do you do if you've been able to buy down your costs of goods? What do you do with the extra margin that you're getting? Now, I think what you'll find as you look across industries and at individual companies within industries, you're going to find that most everyone has very similar cost of goods sold and very similar profits as a percent of sales. And what we want to do is do something different so that we can get a better leverage on that cost of goods sold or better leverage on our bottom line. So if you do get cost savings, you got two choices with what you can do with it. Pass it through to the customers with lower prices, and that'll increase your volume for sure. Lower your price, always the volume will go up. And secondly, what it'll do is discourage competition, because competition will say, wow, I can't match that cost. At least I'd have to invest money for a year or more just to match that lower cost. So I'm not going to go into that market. Alternatively, the other thing you can do is retain the savings. So if you get cost savings, you can take that extra profit that's in there and leave the prices the same and just stick the money in your pocket. Your volume will remain the same because you're not giving anyone an incentive to buy, but your margins per unit will increase, and therefore, presumably, you'll have a larger bottom line. But unfortunately, this draws competitors because they see, wow, they improved their cost and they're leaving the price high. We could go to work and not be in a penalty environment because our price is the same as theirs. But in a year from now, when we get our cost savings down, we can go in and rip them by dropping the price to the customers. So my last parting shot was to have you make some comments on that, and we did do that. So now I'm going to move on and try and catch the last part of the slide presentation on the two major alternative strategic positions. And we're running a little, in doing this, we're running a little ahead of ourselves because there's some things that would be good to know about strategic setting prior to looking at the low cost, low price, or as we're going to do in the next slide or the next two slides, looking at differentiation. So there's some places where low price, low cost works very well. And one of them is when you got a homogeneous product. So you can pick any kind of a product that you want to, that everybody uses the same thing. One of the things, since I see homogeneous up there, I thought about homogenized milk, because in the dairy section, you're going to find everybody's milk is exactly the same price because they got all the same cows. You mix that milk together, and the only difference is which label you got on the container. I'm going to bring up gasoline 3 or 4 times, I think, on this one slide, but that's another homogeneous product. What's the difference between the gasoline at the Chevron station and the one at the Union 76? They're both the same. In fact, sometimes I think they both draw out of the same tank that's buried in the middle of the four-way intersection, and they just all draw on the same thing, and the only difference is price. If you're in a market where price competition is vigorous, you have to keep your costs low, because you're going to get pressure to reduce your prices. And the only way you can survive is to keep your costs low. If you've got a standard product and there's a lot of suppliers, then you have to, again, you have to have low costs because your competitive suppliers will fiddle around with price to try and buy business away from you. When people all use the product in the same way, you have no opportunity for differentiating yourself or making yourself different in some way. So the best thing to do is kind of hunker down and make sure that your costs are low so you can adjust pricing to meet the needs of the customer and to combat the efforts of your competitors. Now, the next three things I've got there all have right next to the right of them the word 5F, or the letters 5F. And what that refers to is 5 forces. This is the concept that Michael Porter talks about. And this is a case where I'm a little ahead of things because we really should have talked about 5 forces before you began to talk about these different strategic alternatives. But we didn't have that option because we got to get started on the game in order to get the game finished on time. But low switching cost is if you can move from one product to another with very little difference in the final usage cost of the product. And again, I said I'd go back to gasoline, and this is where I could talk about that you can go down the street, just look for the cheapest price. If it happens to be on the other side of the road, you hang a U-turn, and that's the total cost of making a switch from one vendor to another. There are other times where you'll have a product that by itself, it seems to be innocuous enough that it's easy to get into and easy to get out of, but there are other ancillary costs associated with it. Now, I've got an iPhone 7S, and so I'm about 3 or 4 versions behind, but I've got so much stuff in there with different kind of apps and that I've actually set up a thing where I'll put 3 or 4 apps of the same type into a little subset. That's what I'd call it. So I know when I go in there to change that out, I'm going to lose a half a day and getting everything transferred from an old device to a new device. And also I'm going to end up then with about another half a day on my own trying to figure out and get everything back on the screen in the way that it is familiar to me. And I'm just not willing to spend that extra time. So that's a cost of switching that prevents me from moving on to the next version of my iPhone. If buyers are large and have significant bargaining power, this is one of the things that's dictated by the 5 forces, and we'll learn about that in another couple of sessions. But if if you're running a small company and Walmart wants to buy a product like one you make, you know that they're going to give you a lot of volume, but they're also going to tell you what the price is, and they're going to dictate other terms as well. Specifically, you're expected when they have their truck pulling up, and they'll give you a 2 or 3 hour advance notice. When their truck pulls up, they expect to have it serviced immediately so that the truck can get back on the road. And why is that important? Because you can't make money with the truck sitting in a parking lot. It's got to be on the road moving product. So in that case, the buyer really has the hammer, and they can do a lot of dictating about price and terms. And so one of the things you got to do is make sure you're at super low cost so that you can be competitive for that business. Finally, there are situations where you'll find there's certain industries where people are constantly moving in with new, better, improved versions. Obviously, fast food would be one of those, where all the time there's a new store opening up with a Five Guys hamburger or a Blaze pizza or wow, what else? I don't eat that much I don't get out that much right now because of the COVID, but I know that they're continually having new restaurants come in. And the way a newcomer gets in there is they offer discounts. So that new five guys might come in and offer you $1 or $1.50 off that hamburger just to get you to try it. And this means you've got to keep your costs in line so you can accept that kind of price competition as you're trying to get yourself situated in the market. So those are some of the things to consider for low cost, low price. Now, you all are familiar with, I know you're familiar, you may or may not have flown on Southwest, but you're familiar with the company because you probably used it in 2 or 3 other classes as an exemplar. So down at the bottom here, I've got a little thing that says, I want to have you all talk about it. Whoa, don't get ahead of yourself, Bill. So I'm going to stop sharing and ask you, what do you think are some of the things that Southwest does that allows them to have the position they have? Thinking in terms now of things that will allow them to reduce their costs and therefore to reduce their prices.
I think one of the major ones they have is they don't go global. They don't go all over the world. They can't keep it in one region, Southwest, obviously.
Mhm.
And they've been slowly expanding out, but they've been careful not to overexpand. That way they can stay in only certain hubs and certain terminals. That way they can keep the cost down.
Okay, and you've made a couple of important points. One of the things about Southwest is they're very disciplined when they grow. So they know there's more opportunities out there than they can service, but they select the ones where they can get up and running and profitable and not overstretch their financial capability. So that's one thing. The other thing you said that they stayed in their market, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so this is an opportunity to buy down their costs in the markets where they are and make them even more competitive against people that are more spread out. And there are very few companies. One of the key characteristics of Southwest Airlines is that they do have the discipline. There are very few companies that will stick to the last. And that, of course, is one of my 4 principles for strategy setting. What's the first one? Do you remember, Ryan? You could phone a friend if you can't remember that.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and phone a friend on this one if someone wouldn't mind helping me out here. You put me on the spot. I can't remember.
Oh, okay. Well, write it. You could write it on the palm of your hand so that you will get it the next time. What were the 4 principles that I said at the beginning of the semester?
Is it focus, simplicity, clarity, and consistency?
You got it, and it's the first one. Is Natalie? That the first one that we want to think of here is. I'm glad I didn't pick you up. You must have just come in. So.
Yeah, I came in a little late. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. No problem. So that's why I showed, one of the reasons I showed the film, so that people can be hopefully not only entertained, but have something that's thought provoking. So when people come, people will inevitably, you get caught in, it's drive time, you get caught in the traffic out there.
Yeah.
I get caught in the traffic going from here to the refrigerator, but the key thing is that Southwest keeps focused. They focus, and that's how they are able to maintain their position. Any other things you can think of?
Professor, I was going to say something.
Yeah.
They attract new customers by letting their passengers carry multiple bags on the plane for free.
Yes, that's an
I
interesting
think they
thing.
can do up to three bags for free.
Okay, now let's think about that for a moment. You got to schlep your own bags, right? They don't have a porter carrying them out to the plane side for you. You have to carry them yourself.
Yeah.
Correct. Why doesn't everyone else do that? I mean, it looks like an easy thing to copy.
Yeah.
Why don't the other people do it?
They want to get more money.
Okay, so
People are gonna
they're,
pay for luggage anyways.
who was that that just, was that Jose?
No, you have.
Oh, but you say what now?
They're gonna pay for luggage anyways.
With the other carriers?
Yeah, so like most flights, like yeah, I have to take some clothes, not to take some things. So if I can't take a carry-on, or if a carry-on is not enough for me, I'll take some luggage, which costs money, which is like around like $50 typically.
Okay, and you're willing to pay that?
I mean, I kind of have to.
Yeah, I don't even like to pay 10 cents at the grocery store for a bag. I'll carry everything out in my arms rather than pay that 10 cents. But why do you, you're willing to pay it, but why are they charging it? Why aren't they able to give you free bags too?
Isn't it pretty expensive on the carriers themselves?
Well, it is a cost associated with it, but it's also associated with Southwest. How are they able to do that and still make an honest dollar? And they make quite a few honest dollars, even in tight markets.
Could it be because they're not international? So like most of the flights are not like to send the baggage over. It's not expensive for them compared to other carriers.
Well, that could be part of it, but there is a logical reason, and we may discover this in about 2 weeks. We're going to look at Southwest Airlines. That's the first paid for case that you have.
Not sure if this will be particularly it, but I know one thing that's major with Southwest is because they tend to cater to a lot of business customers, and so a few times I've flown on them. It's mostly business customers and not a lot of families that are flying on Southwest. So, for example, if I'm flying for business, I don't care where I get a seat because I'm not really looking out the window. I don't have anyone to say, "Hey, look, it's a pretty view." I'm just, flying for myself, and so, for whatever business trip I need to take. So it's just really beneficial for me to just, for whatever else, say whatever is open. I don't care. And so I do notice on their flights that they do tend to have more business minded and less families on their flights.
Yeah, that's one of their key categories is business people who want to get there on time, and that's another characteristic of Southwest is they've got a good on-time record as compared to other planes, and we're going to find out. We're going to see why that's the case, because there is a logical reason again why Southwest is able to do that. But with the bags, the key characteristic is we'll learn is that Southwest doesn't cooperate with any of the other airlines. So if you were flying, say, on Delta from New York to LA, and then you're going to catch a puddle jumper with American Airlines from there up to Sacramento, and it was just going to be you stop 30 minutes and you get on the plane and fly to Sacramento. What happens to your bags? What
They get transported from one airliner to the other.
Yeah, it's called interline transfer. So there's a cooperation. So when you land on in LA, Delta takes that over to the what did I say? American? Yeah, the American flight area, and puts that on the plane going up to hopefully on the plane up to Sacramento. Either that or it'll go to Seattle possibly. But if they do it right, they do that. Well, there's money that changes hands then. American is going to pay Delta for moving the bags from one plane to the other. Because they have no relationship, they don't, Southwest doesn't have to pay that fee.
Mm.
So what do they do with the fee? We said that you got to keep your costs low. This is reducing their cost. What do you do with the difference?
They pass it on to the customer.
Yeah, pass it back on to the customer. And so if, but in the meantime, you've inconvenienced the passenger because he's now got to go down to the carousel at Delta when he flies in from New York and pick up his bag and carry it probably back through the security check and put it on the plane on the way to Sacramento. So what they do is they've taken the cost, they've reduced their cost, they pass it on to the customer in terms of lower ticket cost, but at the same time they're saying in exchange for that, if you'll carry your own bag, we'll give it to you for free. So this is it's a very interesting characteristic that they have that way, and it's very important for their bottom line. So Jose, are you a reader?
Yes.
Okay, you and I need to talk. It's you. If you, I'm right above you right now on my screen,
Oh,
and you can see I got a full library too.
oh yeah, I have a pretty big library myself.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to move my camera around, but that is about 20% of what I got in this room.
Yeah, my wife and I have about 1,700 books, I believe.
Very good. We do need to talk, because that's one of my passions outside of teaching. The other one is going to prison, and I can't do that right now because they won't let us go into prison because of COVID. All right, I'm going to go back on these slides again. And thank you for keeping the conversation, all of you for keeping the conversation going, because that's where you learn and where I get to have some things to give you positive responses for your grades. So that takes us into differentiation. We talked about low cost, low price. Differentiation is where you create tangible and or intangible benefits for the customer so he prefers your product. And obviously one of the intangible benefits that you've got available to you in the game is to buy celebrity endorsements. You know, it doesn't do anything to the product, but it certainly changes the desirability for the customer to buy the product. Now, an intangible cost, both tangible and intangible, may or may not increase your costs. Obviously, we like to do it without increasing costs. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked the earlier class. What's the safest automobile on the road?
Toyota.
Who is that?
Toyota, I said it.
Okay, and who is it that said that?
I don't know myself because I've been having a lot of cars, and Toyota is the best way to go. It's reliable and it never breaks down.
Well,
That was the case about 10 years ago.
well, I want to say who made that comment so I can give you some credit for it.
Oh, me, Francisco.
Okay, Pancho, right?
Yeah, Pancho. Yes.
Okay. And you said Toyota?
Yes.
Okay. Well, there was a car, and that's a good answer. Last class, somebody said Tesla, and that was a good answer too. But over the years, there's been one car that everyone says is the best on the market, and because they advertised it that way for a number of years. And it was, I can give you an idea, it was made in Sweden.
Isn't it Volvo?
Yeah, Alonzo, that's right.
Okay.
And that is historically has been considered the safest car. And I don't know that they've advertised it that way since in the last decade. But there's a kind of a spillover effect or halo effect from the advertising they did in the past, and they get the benefit of that. I think Subaru is another one that pushes their safety record real hard as well. So let's go back here and look a little further. So what we ideally, if we can get something that doesn't increase costs, that would be great. Now, when you do differentiate your product, it may or may not allow you to increase your prices. You may just have to do it just to be competitive, to stay in the market. So what you want to do with a differentiating product is create an advantage, a competitive advantage, and there should be another word in there, a sustainable competitive advantage to either command a premium price and or increase unit sales and or build brand loyalty. So it could be all of those, any kind of a combination of those three. And what you try and do is create a value that isn't easily matched or cheaply copied. Now, if I talk about Volvo as having been advertising 10 years ago as the safest car, and people still, there's a number of people who still would think that way. Man, for somebody to catch up, it's going to take a lot of advertising dollars for a long period of time. And in many cases, the kind of thing that you have where you've created an increased value by differentiating your product, in many cases, it has taken years to develop that differentiation in the customer's minds. Always, though, you got to think about spending less on differentiating the product than what you have to sell the thing for, because you don't want to sell it for less than it costs you to make that differentiation possible. So there are a number of different themes that can be used for differentiation, and many of these can be used in the game. So wide selection and one-stop shopping, you can do that. You have between 50 and 500 different model style combinations that you can offer. You can do it with by changing your SQ rating. It'll allow you to improve your differentiation. Home Depot is a good example of this. This is an industry that's been around now for probably about 35, 40 years. And previously, there were a bunch of independent lumber yards, and they all did pretty well, incidentally. And there were also hardware stores, and they combined the two, brought together a lot of the regional lumber yards and allowed construction companies or people doing construction work to do one-stop shopping for all of the supplies they needed. And as I said, you can do the same thing with your shoes. Second, superior service. Now here you can build a factory closer to where the customers are, or it could set up your inventory in a way to be able to give quick deliveries. Those are two things for superior service. But FedEx is a prime example of that. FedEx for many years had the advertisement, if it absolutely positively has to get there overnight, use FedEx. Nordstrom uses a different kind of superior service. Among other things, they'll take back anything and give you a full refund, even if it's badly used. There's an example that they tell about in their war stories about somebody who brought back a set of automobile tires and asked for a refund. Well, Nordstrom's doesn't even sell tires, but they gave the customer the refund because it's a lot cheaper to keep a customer than it is to acquire a customer. So it makes good sense to do that.
Professor?
Yeah.
Would Amazon be a good example of superior service because they get you your product in 2 days?
Yeah, in fact, they were getting it to us overnight.
Yeah.
A lot of times. Now they're facing two problems. The COVID has accelerated the willingness to go to online shopping. And so we've probably picked up maybe 4 or 5 years of people converting from not being willing to do that to really being forced to do it because they have to stay home. And the other thing, so that's increased their volume and it really put a strain on their system. But the other thing was we've also had some weather issues and things like that within the COVID vaccinations and the getting those vaccinations distributed preempted the use of the trucks that Amazon or other shippers would have had available. So as a result, we're not getting that overnight service right now. But Amazon has found a way to do it under normal circumstances, and they have the ability to grow at a reasonable rate to absorb additional amounts of that kind of volume. I'm sure that some of you know people that are working there at the service center for Amazon, because there are a lot of kids that are involved with Amazon that come out of Cal State. The third kind of differentiation theme is prestige. And this is something that does take years, even generations, to build. Rolex was not always the best watch on the market, and Rolls-Royce, though, has been around as the premier car in the world for, probably 80 years. You can create prestige, of course, by using a paid endorser. Quality manufacturing, you could do that. But Honda and Toyota are two companies that have that reputation. I had a Honda that I had 450,000 miles on, and then I gave it to my grandson to let him drive it, and he blew up the engine. But prior to doing that, I'd taken it in for servicing and get the oil change. And the guy changing the oil said, "Man, you ought to sell this car back to Honda. It looks like it hadn't even been used." And I hate to admit it, but I'm not a very good caretaker for cars. But nonetheless, he said the engine looked primo prior to having my grandson blow it up. Top of the line image, again, it takes a long, long time to build that reputation. Most of you, I think, know Ralph Lauren as a high fashion kind of clothing, and Coco Chanel with the Chanel line of perfumes and other stuff that women wear besides perfume. And then Starbucks, which doesn't sell coffee, they sell experience. So the question is, if you pick any of these companies and any of those particular themes, is it easy for somebody else to copy? And I think in every case, we're talking about something that requires years to build a reputation. Now, I might add that reputations may take years to build, but they take about 20 minutes to get destroyed. So let's talk about Starbucks. This is what the old coffee shops used to look like. This is what the new type looks like. And that's, of course, the Starbucks coffee shop. So again, let's kind of break in here and see what you think about the uniqueness of Starbucks.
So you just want us to discuss like how we feel of that uniqueness?
I'm sorry?
You just wanted to discuss about how we feel about that uniqueness?
Yeah. And do you appreciate it? Could you enhance it? Do you think it's a waste of time?
Well, in some ways, and I have a lot of friends from Seattle. I've been there a few times, and also my experience with Starbucks is it's convenient. I call it the McDonald's of coffee. You know, it's not great for just coffee. Like people who actually appreciate real good coffee typically don't do Starbucks. Like you mentioned, it's the experience. It's for some reason I really have a desire to pay $6-7 for a drink. But if I want a better tasting coffee, and there's plenty of other coffee places now that still have a very good experience, and especially with the 20s and 30s group, where you could, go have a place to go to enjoy a cup of coffee while still being able to do your homework while you're sitting there, or play board games with someone. So wonderful, but there's been so many other companies that have copied it. They may not be as big, but they might even give a better product than Starbucks does. Like, let's say, a better tasting coffee, or better price, more reasonably priced, or even a better food options than Starbucks offers.
There's lots of opportunities to work around the fringes around Starbucks, but what they've earned the right to is the premier position because they have created experience. Now, if you do any online dating, what's the best way to meet your date? Go to Starbucks. That's always comes up in the conversation because it's a neutral place to go, and you're going to be in public, and you don't have to worry about getting Darth Vader as your first date. So they've got a lot of advantages in that respect. Okay, well, that's good, Jose. Let's go back and take a look a little further here. How long do you think it took me to find that slide on the lower left-hand corner there?
I think you can just Google that specific slide. I've seen that many times before.
Yeah, that's a rather a uniquely clever one. I have a couple others that may pop up in some of these presentations before the semester's over. So that's looking at the differentiated type model. But one thing that we need to understand about all of our products, irrespective of what approach you take, is the importance of perceived value. And buyers only buy what they perceive. If you try and get into an argument with somebody and they are set on their position, you might as well agree with them, because you're never going to get any place changing somebody's perception. So customers really don't buy value unless they perceive it, unless they're aware of it. And the price premium represents both what you actually deliver and also what the customer perceives. And this has some implications for internet sales. Actual and perceived value can differ when buyers are unable to assess their experience with the product. For example, you go out and do a test drive with an auto. And when you get in that car, you can feel how good it feels to drive. You can sense the aroma of the newness of the car. You can feel the comfort that eventually will go away as you break it in. That's an important psychological thing for people to make that decision. Now, interestingly, you're seeing a lot of stuff on TV lately where they've got the Carvana, and Vroom, I think, is another name that's out there. There's I don't know who's got the one where you can buy your car like buying soda pop out of a vending machine. But what they're doing is they're taking away this important aspect of the buying decision, the ability to experience it. We're going to see that you can do the experience as we get to the IKEA case, because that's an important part of their shtick, is get you in the store so you can be testing everything that they've got in their inventory. So I just do want to point out that because actual and perceived value can differ when you're unable to assess the experience with the product. And this is the problem with internet sales. And you've got to be very careful on how you're going to create perceived value without the buyer being able to experience the actual product. Now, about 3 or 4 years ago, there was a problem at Best Buy. Best Buy is one of the best managed companies in the United States, and they were running into a problem that was really could have been a fatal problem, where people were looking up stuff on the internet that they wanted to buy, and then they drive down to Best Buy and test out the product there in the store And if they like the product, then they'd go home and buy it on the internet. And the whole process was called showrooming. So Best Buy came up with their answer to it, and what they did are two parts of it. Bring in an ad that shows me what price you have, and we'll match it no matter what. And then you can even take the product home with you. You don't have to wait for Amazon to deliver it or for the mail to ship it to you. And secondly, if you buy something like a stereo setup or a new computer, they'll do the installation for you, put all the pieces together. So when you take it home, you're flying. You're right there, ready to go, and not have to fiddle around for half a day putting it together. So that was a strategic counter to the idea of showrooming. So just the bottom line is the customer's perception is the customer's reality, and you can't overcome it. You can only work with it. So as Michael Porter would say, be different. What have we got, about 10 minutes? 5 minutes, 2 minutes? I want to take a look at one thing with you, and I may not even have the right, I got the wrong company here. So let's change that to 99. That's what you all are. Industry 99. So I'm going to look at reports for the industry, and the first one I go to always is competitive intelligence report, because it tells me the most amount of information for the least amount of work. And I've not looked, I may have looked at this over the last day, but I don't recall what you have here. But I want to see if you can point out anything that you might do differently as you look at all of your competitors on the screen. Now I know that I have a couple, I've got some of you that really didn't put in much time on the last decision. And I really want you to put in the time in this forthcoming decision, because this is the last opportunity you have to learn before you start doing this for real. You see anything there that catches your attention?
Professor,
Yeah.
did you say like a high market share is good?
A high market share is great as long as you're making profit.
Okay.
So in this particular thing, the highest market share was 13.2%, and that was company B. Now, if we were to go, I always start with the North American report because it's the largest market positioning. But I'm going to drop right down, because this is how I can do it. I'm going to drop down to Latin America. And it usually has the squirreliest kind of position, because uniquely they not only don't have a factory, but they probably have the lowest per capita income of the 4 regions you'd work in. So you can get some very peculiar kinds of numbers. And look at, if we were to pick one thing there on this report, on the Latin American report, one thing that pops out at me is we have SQ ratings running from a low of 4 up to a high of 9. And if we were to go back to North America, I think we're going to find all of them being a little higher, but we'll see. That's just my prediction. And they ran from, let's see, here's 4. There were still some that are low, but there are also some higher ones here, 5.4, 8.9, 6.2, 6.6. So this is one of the areas that is important for positioning yourself, because you want to keep your SQ ratings going up. You don't want to get too high because the marginal value of investing more dollars in styling and quality just isn't there. Go from a 5 to a 6 and your SQ rating, which you do by investing money, probably in styling, maybe in developing new materials or methods. Moving from 5 to 6, you're going to get a very good return on your money. Moving from an 8 to a 9, or going above a 9 to a 10, that's as high as you can go. The very little marginal improvement. So you want to stay in the middle ranges. If your SQ rating drops below 4, it's a shoe that the sole will come off of it in the first 100 miles. So it's not really the best way to go. Anything else anything that you all see? What about pricing? What can you tell about pricing?
For
Is
the
everybody,
wholesale,
huh?
for the wholesale price, we're all pretty close together.
Yeah, and you know how you can check that? And who is that made that comment?
Travis,
Okay, Travis, what's a good indicator for you for where you might want to be with your pricing?
would it be like around everybody else's or no?
Yeah, you want to be competitive with the other people, unless it's quite clear that you're going for a different kind of a market strategy.
You don't
So
want to be too high or too low, right?
Well, you want to be around the same, but if somebody going with a differentiated product may really try and kick up their price and get it and do it with a lot more advertising and a lot more dealer support, and with a higher SQ rating, you could put all those things together to justify a higher price. Maybe some other people that say no, low price and low cost. We're going to go low cost by reducing the SQ rating, dropping it back down toward the 4, which is the beginning point for North America. Using a little bit less brand advertising. Got to keep the dealer support up, but we might not go with a celebrity. Might just try and cold turkey sell the product. But where you can go, Travis, is over on that green bar to the right. And that gives you a real good indicator where the industry is. So while the wholesale prices that you talked about run from 52 at the high down to 48 at the low, the average is around $49.15. So
Okay.
that's a place you can always check, find out where am I. I may want to be higher, or I may want to be lower, but at least it gives you a marker to look at. And does the arithmetic for you, so you don't have to work quite as hard.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Now, one comment about the private label, and then I'm going to let you all go. Let's take a look down here at this. You're pretty well spread out for First Decision. Pretty well spread out. Team J, incidentally, doesn't really exist. You can see it's the little blip over here. Hardly selling anything. There's nobody in Team J right now, and I'm not allowed to drop that team until we reset the game. That's one of the rules of the game for the game manager, which is me. But I did want to make this comment, and then you can get out of here right away. On the private label, you'll notice that Team C ended up with a -60, and that means that they oversold. They produced their product, but they had a demand that was greater than their supply. So while there was a demand for 2,127,000 pairs, they only could deliver 2,067,000 pairs to their wholesale or retail dealers. And yet they were able to sell 200,000 pairs in the private label market. Now their price on the private label was $32 a pair. The price on their wholesale was 52. So for every pair that they sold in the private label market that they couldn't supply to their regular wholesale retail market, they gave away $20. Now, you have to remember how the game allocates product. It always sells, takes the first part of your production and fills orders for the internet. The second thing it fills is any orders that were for private label. These are each contracted out. Well, the one of them is a contract because you have to deliver the same day, but the private label is a contract that you've got to deliver against it. The last place that gets the stock is the wholesale or your dealer network. And therefore you have to be careful that we always want to take care of them because that's our biggest market position and also the highest profitability we have. So out of time, you're most gracious to wait patiently for me, but get on that next set of the next game. I did re-record your lecture from last time. I just didn't get it put out. It's already on a YouTube. I just have to give you the directions where to find it. I'll do the same thing with the one we're recording right now. So see you next Tuesday. Be sure and read pages 15 to 21 in the What is Strategy book. That's a heavy duty reading assignment. And we'll go from there next week. Okay.